So in this video, I want to talk about drawing every day and whether or not that is actually good for your art practice. I've noticed that there's a lot of art YouTube channels that are telling their viewers to draw every day. Just draw every day and you'll get good at art. And generally, I think it's okay advice. Like I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think it's good to get regular practice in for sure. But I don't find myself agreeing with it entirely. And I think there's another side to the story that they're probably not telling you. So I actually kind of want to talk about the pros and cons of drawing every day, and there are cons, believe me. But before we get into it, I will give you a bit of advice that really helped me with my own art practice, and maybe it will help you too. Regardless of what skill level you're at, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, my advice would be draw as much as you can without burning yourself out. Because the burnout is real, guys. I've experienced it many times. I remember when I was learning how to draw perspective and figures, I went really hard on the learning process. I was just doing it every day, and I would spend hours every day just drawing. I would never make any time for myself. I would never relax and do things that were fun. I would just draw every day, and that was it, hoping that would make me a good artist and help me get good results. And it kind of did, but it also kind of didn't. And I just ended up burning out. And I tell you something, when the burnout sets in, you'll know, because you won't want to feel like drawing ever. So my advice is just draw as much as you can without burning yourself out. I think that's the first bit of advice I can give you. So if that means, look, if you can draw every day, no problem, then that's great. That's a good place to be. And I feel like I'm in that part of my art journey now where I can draw most days, or sometimes even every day of that week. So that's a good place to be. So keep at it. If you draw 5 days a week, that's also good. Nothing wrong with that. Like, you're getting the reps in and you're doing it regularly. If you can only dedicate 2 days a week or 3 days a week to draw, maybe because of your lifestyle, maybe you work long hours at your job, and I can relate to that. I spent many years of my life working in the hair industry. I was in a salon, and man, like sometimes I would do 10-hour days, 11-hour days, 12-hour days. I did a 14-hour day once. That was horrible. But I get it. There's some jobs where you've really got to dedicate a lot of hours of your life to, and you don't have as much time or energy for drawing. So if you're only doing 2 days or 3 days a week, I would say do that, but keep it consistent. Because it's actually consistency that gets good results. If you're going to draw 3 days a week, well, then you do that every week. If you're only going to do 2 days a week, that's okay. But do that every week. Alright? Make sure you get those 2 days in. Get those reps in. And keep it consistent. Because if you can get yourself into a routine and keep it consistent, you will get good results. It's just like going to the gym, honestly. In fact, when I was going to the gym, when I first went, I went every day. And I thought that would get me good results, It would make me big and strong. It didn't make me big and strong. It made me very weak and exhausted. And I had no energy for anything else when I was doing that. So I scaled it back to 4 days a week. I went to the gym 4 days a week. And I had 3 rest days. And I had way better results. I was actually building a bit more muscle. I looked better. I felt healthier. Like, I needed those rest days. And I think it's okay to treat drawing the same way. It's exhausting to draw. It's mentally exhausting. There's so much that goes into it. And if you can draw every day because you're at that skill level and you've got that experience behind you, that's great. Like, keep doing that. But if you can't do that, if you feel too exhausted to draw every day, then don't do that. Just draw 5 days or 4 days or 3 days a week. Just draw as much as you can. All right? Don't push yourself too hard, because you won't get good results doing that. So let's talk about the pros of drawing every day. Let's talk about the obvious benefits, all right? Well, the most obvious benefit is you get a lot of regular practice in. And regular practice is a good thing. That's going to make you better. You're going to get more familiar with the pencil or the paintbrush or whatever medium you're using. So that's good. It's definitely good. Another good thing, another good reason to draw every day is it instills discipline. And I think that's something that a lot of artists don't have, you know. There is the lazy artist stereotype, and that exists for a very good reason. Discipline is important because even if you don't feel like drawing, it's good to draw anyway just to instill that discipline. All right? And the thing is that one day when you want to work on a big painting and you want to work on a large composition, when you first start that, you're feeling very inspired. You're feeling very motivated by the idea and the concept of that artwork, which is great. But it's going to take you a long time to draw a big piece. And halfway through that drawing, you're going to feel exhausted. And you're going to feel like it's never going to end, like you're never going to finish this drawing. And only discipline is going to help carry you to the finish line. All right? So artists who aren't disciplined in their craft, they typically don't finish their artworks. And I think that's a problem that can be solved if they do smaller sketches every day and focus on doing that. And that's another thing you can do. If you're going to draw every day, keep it small. Just have a small sketchbook and just work on sketches that don't take too long. But you could also work maybe on like an A3 size piece of paper and do a more refined study. If you want to dedicate an hour to whatever subject it is that you're learning, you could do that too. I think it's good to break it up a bit. But generally, quick, small sketches on a very small scale, that's very doable. And I do that quite a lot. So if you're going to draw every day, then keep it small and simple. I think that's also good advice. So those are some of the benefits to drawing every day. It's regular practice, which is great because there's no shortage of subjects to learn in art. I mean, you could learn portraits, you can learn landscapes, human anatomy, architecture, level designs, character designs, you know, the list goes on and on. Industrial design, you could be drawing cars and things like that. There is no shortage of subjects to learn. So you got a lot of ground to cover. And if you draw every day, the more ground you will cover. So that's pretty obvious, I think. But what are the cons to drawing every day? There are two major cons that I can think of, and I don't see anybody else talking about this. The biggest one, and I think this is very important, when I was doing online tuition, like I did personalized online tuition a while ago, and I would just have like a very small group of students, and I would actually look at their work and give them feedback, and then I would try to personalize their tuition to help them improve as an artist, right? And I basically had two types of students. There were the ones who never picked up a pencil in their life, so they were a blank canvas for me, you know, and they didn't come with any bad habits. And then there were the so-called talented artists. And, you know, they had a bit of a drawing experience, which was good. But they had a lot of bad habits. And the reason they came with a lot of bad habits, you know, it could have been anything. Maybe their sense of proportion was off. Maybe it was their line work. Line work, that's a common one. My line work was atrocious for many years. Still is sometimes. But the thing is that they developed these bad habits by making mistakes over and over again. The thing is, if you make a mistake once, it's just a mistake. And if you make a mistake in your drawing twice, then okay, you made a couple of mistakes. But if you draw for many years and you make that same mistake 1,000 times or 10,000 times, then it's no longer a mistake. It's a bad habit. And the point that I'm trying to make is drawing every day can actually make that habit worse. And I noticed that in a lot of my students' drawings, like line work with, like, I think we've all been guilty of doing really bad lines where they're very scratchy and they're messy, and we draw over and over it to correct the line. That's a common bad habit that you see in a lot of people's artworks. And drawing every day is not going to fix that. Drawing mindfully is what's going to fix it. Okay? So if you're drawing every day and you're making the same mistakes, whatever it is, over and over again, that's going to develop a bad habit, and it's going to become very ingrained into your art practice. And I actually see these in some of these YouTubers who talk about drawing every day. I can kind of see it in some of their drawings, and I'm not going to name names. But I look at their finished artworks and I think, well, the perspective is a bit wrong, or the proportions are a little bit off, or maybe they're drawing in a very cartoony style, which is, there's quite a lot of YouTube artists that draw that way. And they're kind of using that style to cover up the mistakes, if you know what I mean. Like they're trying to play it off as their style when, really it's probably a fundamental error. I don't know if I made sense, but my point is that I sometimes look at their artwork and I think, well, there's something a little bit wrong about what they're drawing, and I think that's because they're drawing every day. When you draw every day, that habit is going to become so ingrained into your practice, and when it does, bad habits are very, very tough to break. And going back to when I was doing the online tuition with these students, the best students were the ones who had no drawing experience, and they weren't exactly young. They might have been late 20s or early 30s, but they were the best students because they were just a blank canvas. They didn't come with any bad habits, and they were just doing the exercises I was giving them, and they were just off and away. But the quote-unquote experienced artists, they were tougher because sometimes they just thought they knew better, or they were just struggling to break this one habit that was really letting their artwork down. So when you're drawing every day, you've got to draw mindfully. You have to look at your artwork, and you have to actually look at what's wrong with it, and you have to find what it is you don't like. If it's proportion, then you have to be mindful of that so that when you go into the next drawing, you're going to focus on drawing your proportions a bit better. If the line work is too messy, then again, you have to be mindful of that and make sure you clean up your line work in the next drawing, because if you don't do that, if you're not drawing mindfully, those habits are going to get better. They're going to get worse, and no amount of drawing is going to fix it. You can't just draw every day to get rid of that. It's actually going to get worse. So that's one big con that nobody ever seems to talk about. The other con that I can think of is how mentally exhausting it is to actually draw every day. I'll give you an example, right? So last year I've been doing a lot of character designs for these Romans, and I was also drawing Napoleonic figures because I'm intending to turn these characters and put them into like a much larger composition, right? I wanted to explore ancient Rome, and I also wanted to explore the Napoleonic era, and I'm trying to put them into their own sort of paintings, right? Which meant that I had to do a lot of sketches of figures and characters and things like that, and that was fun. But there came a point where I was drawing them every day, and I was sketching them every day, and they just weren't really getting better. And that was a bit demotivating. But I thought, whatever, that's part of the process, right? Anyway, so earlier this year, I had to take a break from drawing, even though I didn't want to, because I was studying a residential architecture course, and I was working as well. And I was studying full time, by the way. So this was, you know, took a huge chunk of my life out. And, you know, these architecture courses, nothing is drawn manually that much anymore. It's all done on CAD software. So I, I couldn't find any time to draw. Like the amount of assignments that I had to do, and as well as work, like I was like, man, I can't, I can't find any time to draw. I'm just wrecked. I just felt exhausted. So I put the pencil down for a while, and I actually went about probably 5 or 6 weeks without drawing anything at one point, which is a long time to go without drawing anything for an artist. But I had no choice. I was like, I got so much work to catch up on, and I got so many assignments to do. Like, I just gotta bite the bullet and put the pencil down. I'll come back to it later. So about 6 weeks later, I come back to the drawing board, and I'm feeling ready to draw again. I feel inspired. I'm ready to go. Haven't drawn anything for a while, but I was worried that I was going to be very rusty, and whatever I was going to put on the drawing board was not going to be very good. And that was actually not the case at all. I actually drew this character design for a Napoleonic figure, Chasseur, and this guy was just drawn from my head. I was just using what I knew about human anatomy, and I was just going off my knowledge of what I knew about the uniforms of the time, because I did some pretty in-depth research beforehand with those uniforms. And I just drew this guy from my imagination, and I rendered him really well. Like, I was using my knowledge of rendering, like light, shadow, ambient occlusion, ambient light, things like that. And he just turned out really well. I think he was probably one of the best character designs I've drawn. And, I'm not saying it can't get better. Like, there's always ways to improve on this, but I was just really happy with how this guy turned out. And it's funny because when I was drawing every day, I got to this point where my figures weren't improving. And then I take a break, and then I come back and I draw this guy. And I'm just like, wow, okay. Maybe I needed the holiday, right? Because it makes sense. Like, when you work, you go on holidays, you go on vacation to take a break from work, because otherwise you burn out. When you go to the gym, you have a rest day, because you can't work out every day. You got to take a break. So it kind of makes sense that you do the same thing with drawing, right? If you're drawing every day and you're not witnessing any kind of real improvement, then maybe you just need a break from it for a bit. And I'm not suggesting take 6 weeks off, because that's a long time, but yeah, maybe come back to it next week. Why not? It could be the thing you needed. So I'll leave that one there.